What is up, Sports Geeks? It's your host, Josh, here, back with a huge episode here, joined by Nick. As always, college basketball guru himself. It is conference tournament week. We are 5 days away from Selection Sunday as we are recording this. This is being recorded on Tuesday. There are games going on right now in the conference tournaments. Luckily, they're not good ones. So we are going to be breaking down today ACC, Big East, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC tournaments. All of these segmented. Feel free to skip to whichever one you want to talk, what you want to hear about. But Nick, strap yourself in. This is going to be a long episode. Hope you brought some water and maybe a sweatband too. I mean, I don't know if you if you're an accessory guy or not, but you're gonna need one because this is going to be a long episode. So we're gonna hop right into it here. We're gonna start with the ACC. Because I think this one is probably the least going on. So we'll start here. Looking at the bracket here, just quickly diving into it. Obviously, Duke, clear favorite here. I think on like betting wise, they're like -3 or 400 to win the ACC tournament, which is just crazy. But I mean, for you looking at this, Nick, do you see any way in which they don't win this conference tournament?
I want to say yes, just because I obviously want to change it up and I don't want it to continuously just be Duke, chalk, everything. But I'm going to have to say no. I look at the top bracket. You see Carolina having to play on that Wednesday slot. They are going to play Notre Dame, who just probably got one of the worst foul calls known to man to give them to win. But and then I look at that. Like if Carolina beats Notre Dame, they play Wake. If they beat Wake, I don't know. I think that's too many. That's 2 games before they even get to see Duke. I think Duke can easily handle them. And then you look at the bottom of the bracket. Maybe Clemson can do it again. I think this is a very good Louisville team as well. I think they could get to the championship, but I just don't think Louisville has the dogs to compete with a team like Duke. I mean, I know, yes, they finished 18-2 in conference. Pat Kelsey wins the Coach of the Year in the ACC. Fantastic year by them. They'll probably win their first round game in the tournament, and then that'll be it. But I don't see anybody in this conference that can compete with Duke on a neutral floor, really. Because I mean, we go back and we look at it. Yeah, Clemson beat them, but that was at home. Like Clemson has
in an electric environment as well. Yeah,
Clemson has 2 very good wins at home. Them in Kentucky in crazy environments. Now you're going to get Duke on a neutral floor. I'm pretty sure this tournament's back in I want to say North Carolina again.
I think it's in Charlotte this year. I think it's in Charlotte.
So then, yeah, I mean that just makes me feel even more good about the pick that I'm going to make with Duke winning it all.
Yeah, I'm going to stick there with you. I do think that whoever they play, I don't think the ACC championship game will be a blowout. I would like to say that. I think they blow out Georgia Tech or Virginia. I think whoever they play in the semifinal, whether it's Wake Forest or North Carolina, maybe blowout's a strong word, but I would say a comfortable 10 to 15, maybe even 15 to 20 point win. I do think the final, I wouldn't be surprised if Duke's goes down by 5 or 8 at some point in that game, and they end up winning by between 5 and 10 against whoever it is, whether it's Louisville or Clemson. Obviously, Clemson, got them the first time, and I think Clemson had a clear recipe for success, and that was hit the offensive glass hard, and that really hurt Duke, right? So Clemson has the bodies and the game plan that they've done it before, but like you said, it was at the home court in an electric environment. You were taking down the most hyped up freshman since Zion Williamson, maybe even more hyped up than Zion Williamson, right? So there's a lot of things coming into that. I do think this Louisville team is very quality. I just don't know if they have the star power, right? Like, I mean, Chucky Hepburn, don't get me wrong, spectacular season.
Fantastic year.
Javon Hadley's had a great year as well, transferring in from, I believe, Colorado, correct?
Yes.
And so you have, I mean, those 2 guys have both had really, really good years, but Chucky Hepburn is not somebody that I can say is going to take over this game against a Duke team with great, I mean, Zion James guarding Chucky Hepburn.
You got Zion James or Tyrese Proctor guarding him, and he's already instantly at a clear disadvantage. I mean, just the height difference alone, puts Chucky Hepburn behind the 8 ball. So, like, I completely agree with you. I think it's a really good team. I just don't think that they have the star power to remotely compete within. I'd say, like you said, I agree with you. I think it'll be a 10-point. Like if Duke wins in a blowout fashion, the
Mhm.
blowout would be by like 10 points.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think realistically though, I mean, towards March Madness, right? This Louisville team, as we begin to move on here, we're both on Duke. As we begin to move on here
Yeah.
into the Big East, this Louisville team is plenty good to make the Sweet 16 and upset somebody, right? I mean, what we're talking about here is upsetting Duke, who's a clear number one seed
Yeah.
I mean, the number one team in the nation right now. They just, took down Auburn
Yeah.
for that achievement, if you will. So we're talking about beating the number one team in the nation. Like it's not,
Hmm.
and we're saying, we don't think they can do it. They can beat just about anybody on the correct night. And they're one of the hottest teams in basketball right now. So this Louisville team, we're not, I mean, trying to diminish them or Clemson at all. I think Clemson's also very good. I think Louisville's better. But let's not think we're diminishing Louisville at all. This Louisville team is plenty good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a Louisville team, like you said, they could make it to the Sweet 16. I think they're easily going to win their first round game. Now, it depends on who they're going to get in the second round, if it's going to be a good matchup for them, because sometimes throughout this year, there have been matchup nightmares for this team because,
Yep.
like we said, they are a team that when we go back to when they suffered all the injuries at the beginning, they were a team that was only playing eight guys on their roster. They only had
Mhm.
legitimate 8 deep. And that was a serious issue for them at times. And you look at their guards and Rain Smith and Chunky Hepburn, two very, very small guys. You play a team like Duke that's got guards that are averaging 6'4" or taller.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an issue, and I could see
Right.
that being a problem. But I think if Louisville gets the right matchup in the tournament, they could easily make the Sweet 16.
Right. I do think like a matchup for Louisville of like a Michigan could give them fits, right? When you have two
Yeah,
7-footers in the game at the same time. I know Michigan does not take care of the ball at all, but if you have two 7-footers in the game and you're up against a team like Louisville who just struggles to deal with size,
yep,
I
yep,
think that's a clear, like you're talking about, a bad matchup.
yeah,
Now, a bad matchup for Michigan, I think, would be a St. John's team because St. John's might force 20 plus turnovers. Feel like they probably would, which is a perfect transition here. So, Big East tournament here. I think I just got a notification that said, oh, I don't remember how many years ago it was. Might have been 15. It probably was 15. The Kariet Kemba.
yeah,
Yeah, it would have been 15. That makes me feel old, by the way.
yeah,
15 years ago. If I can remember something from 15 years ago, that's
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Cardiac Kemba 15 years ago, I believe today, March 11th, 15 years ago. So I'm assuming we're not going to have a Cardiac Kemba step back this year, but I do think we're going to have a really good tournament. So a couple things to highlight really quickly. One, St. John's battling for a 2 or 1 seed, probably not a 1 seed, battling for a 2 seed. As of right now, Lunardi has them as a 3. They win
yeah,
this tournament, they're 2 easily, in my opinion. Also, Xavier, as crazy as it sounds, fighting for their tournament hopes. And I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
in this situation, they're the 4 seed. Being the 6 seed might have been better for them so they can win a game. But here, you don't win a game or you don't get a warm-up game. You're playing Marquette off the bat. If you lose to Marquette, I'm you have some sweaty hands when it comes to selection Sunday. So that's something to monitor here as well. I think realistically moving through this, there's really no other question marks for me. Marquette, St. John's, Creighton, UConn are all in. Xavier's on the fence, and
yep.
nobody else from that's playing in the first round there can get in unless they were to go win the tournament, in my opinion. Your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. If you really do look at this bracket, like you said, Xavier honestly hurt themselves finishing in the top four, because
As crazy as that sounds, right?
that's a brutal first round matchup to have.
Yeah.
You completely miss out on playing on the first day, which you'd much rather do. Instead, you have to have the first game on Thursday against a Marquette team who just lost on home on their senior night on a really bad turnover, which led to a St. John's buzzer beater.
Terrible turnover.
This is a Marquette team that's going to be really pissed off.
Yep.
Really, really pissed off. And if you're Xavier, they've been playing great. Don't get me wrong, they've been playing great basketball, but that is the last team you probably want to see. You'd rather be sitting in that first round game playing Seton Hall, and then you get to take on UConn.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, there aren't many teams playing for a resume besides Xavier. I mean, you look at Nova. They're playing for the Nova and Georgetown are playing for the crown. Not that people care about that, but that's what they're playing for their seeding. So they still care. They're still going to be playing in these games. They still, want to play hard for the tournament to make sure that they can solidify at least that type of event they're going to go to. So I mean, if we're going around, I think Butler wins the first round game against Providence. I think obviously you get Georgetown. I think obviously you get Nova, and then
Mhm.
that's where it gets a little bit interesting. I think Marquette can pull it off against Xavier. I think Xavier's gonna have a really, really tough selection Sunday.
Mhm.
Um, they're really gonna need some help from these SEC teams, pulling off upsets. Like they really are gonna need Arkansas to lose to South Carolina in that day one game, which we'll talk about here at the end. But I think we're going to see, St. John's packing the house. And then I think they're going to be taking on UConn in the final, who's also going to be packing the house because whenever we see this tournament happen, no matter how bad St. John's has been, their fans show up. And then UConn, their fans travel like crazy.
Oh
So
yeah.
it is going to be an insane environment for that final on Saturday. And I
Mhm.
think it's going to be St. John's versus UConn. I think it comes down to the final possession. And I really do think that St. John's can pull it off and complete the season sweep here in the Big East.
Yeah, I I agree with you for the most part here. I think a little bit where I'm against you here is I think Xavier beats Marquette. I think the reason for this, right? Marquette's safely in. Marquette is not
Yeah,
worried about missing the tournament. Xavier, I mean, what we're talking about here of like, it sucks that you don't get to play in the first round because if you lose, in their minds, you lose, you're out, and you win, you're in.
yeah,
That is, you give a team 4 or 5 days to prepare for a game like that, you're going to get the most energized, the most intense game that Xavier's played all season, right? So
yeah,
I think that given that, sure, Marquette's pissed off. They just lost on their senior night at home against like in the fashion that they did. But I think that this Xavier team is going to be even more motivated than what this Marquette team is, which is crazy to say that coming off of what Marquette is coming off of. But the Xavier team is literally playing a one game tournament to make March Madness. I mean, this is
yeah,
like a playing game for them, right?
yep,
Of if you win, you're in. So I think Xavier wins. I do think that St. John's handles them comfortably. I think St. John's handles just about anybody
yeah,
comfortably in this
yeah,
tournament. I don't Maybe not comfortably. I think they handle everybody. The thing that we haven't really touched on yet, and I don't think it'll come into really hurt Duke because we talked about Duke probably only has one competitive game in that, and that's going to be on, I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday in the championship game,
yeah,
and kind
yep,
of in the semifinal game. But for them, it's like a two
yeah. On
game tournament.
Saturday, yep,
It is Saturday.
yeah. They're Friday are the semis. Saturday's the championship. So they're
Okay.
Friday and Saturdays. The only thing that's going to be difficult, their quarters on Thursday are going to mean, next to nothing.
Right, that's like it's like a practice run through for them almost.
Yep,
So, I think
exactly.
one thing to think about here is that St. John's is going to get to play Butler or Providence in this first round or
Yeah,
in the quarterfinals, and I think they handle them very comfortably. When you get to semifinals and the final, and you get to a team like Marquette, Creighton, or UConn or Xavier playing their, second, third game in 2 or 3 days, and all of them are going to have much more difficult games.
yeah,
You're playing your,
yep,
like, I'm picturing a final where UConn has gone through Villanova, Creighton, and now has to play St. John's in their third game in 3 days. And I'm telling you right now that like Hassan Diarra and Aiden Mahaney are not going to be able to handle the pressure that St. John's puts on them and get good shots consistently because
yep,
your legs are dead. And St. John's has been playing absolutely swarming, hounding defense all year. And when you get to teams playing when you can't shoot the three as well, right? Because your legs aren't under you because it's your third game in 3 days.
hmm
The St. John's team is just going to feast off of that. And they don't rely on the 3-point shot. They don't rely on having their legs able to shoot that because guess what? They're taking mid ranges, they're taking dunks, they're taking layups, they're getting to the foul
yep,
line as much as Patino hates it. Like, uh,
yeah,
I'm sure he doesn't hate it, but I mean, long story short here, I think the St. John's team, the defense that they play is going to be so apparent in the semifinals and final of this tournament because teams are tired. And when you're tired and you have defense being played against you, like what St. John's will play, it is going to make offense so impossible. I wouldn't be surprised if the final they hold them to under 60, whoever they play. I wouldn't be surprised if they play Xavier in the semifinals if they hold them to under 55, just because that's the level of defense that the St. John's team plays. And you're playing a couple of games in a couple of days.
yeah. And it also helps. Like we brought up earlier, you're playing in your backyard. You're playing
Yeah.
at an arena that you use as your second home court.
Yeah.
which they had 3 or 4 games that were supposed to be on campus switched to Madison Square Garden. You're playing in your backyard.
Yeah.
So no, everything is pointing in the direction of St. John's. Now it all comes down to the point of, all right, you got all the limelight on you. You got everybody talking about you. Can you do it?
Mhm.
Can you do it? Can you complete the season sweep? Or are you going to revert back to old St. John's and you're going to show up and you'll win your first game against Butler or Providence, but then when you play that semifinal game against either Xavier or Marquette, you spit the bit and you're looking at a 3 or 4 seed in the tournament, and we're talking completely different, come Selection Sunday when we get that bracket.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I do think my thing with St. John's, their Achilles heel is the free throw line and their shooting in general, I should say.
Yeah, no,
Um,
they definitely struggle to shoot.
yes, the 3-point line is growing actually. Like I think Edge of
It's
four.
gotten better.
Edge of
Definitely
four, I
gotten
think,
better.
he's gotten much better. RJ Lewis has actually gotten much better. Kadari Richmond still can't shoot to save his life, but that's okay because he's got a 6'11" wingspan and shoots a mid-range jumper like he's
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Sean Livingston. So
Yep.
He's just fine. But they've gotten much better. But the thing to think about is when you get into games like this and maybe teams start playing this foul game a little early, especially with a team like St. John's, that's the Achilles heel is that if you are going to have, you're going to go 5 of 12 from the line in the final minute of the game,
Yeah.
it's going to make it difficult to win. Now, my final point on St. John's, and then I'm done. In that situation, we've seen St. John's in situations like that before, right? Like I think back to the Marquette game, to the UConn game, where they
Yeah.
maybe don't shoot well from the line, but they can't, you don't score on them. So you're going to foul us for a 1-on-1. We missed the front end. You have to come down and score still to make that mean something. And then a lot of times when you're up by 8 or you're up by 6, teams can take a quick 2 easily. You can't get anything easy against St. John's. So like when the lack of free throw shooting is going to hurt you if you give up buckets on the other end, and they just don't give up buckets. So that's kind of my last thing. I know I've harped on their defense a ton, but if you haven't watched St. John's yet this season, you watch the semifinals and the final here, and you're going to be you're certainly going to be impressed. I can promise you that.
I got one more point on St. John's. I'll wrap it up. But you just talking about the free throw shooting really made me think to a game I watched last night, and that is not Colgate, Charleston versus UNCW.
Mm-hmm.
They had a guy go to the line last night for Charleston. He was an 88% shooter. He misses back to back. They end up losing because he missed both, and they don't go to OT. And I'm not saying this is probably going to be a thing that happens to St. John's in the Big East tournament because the pressure in the Big East tournament is not nearly as big as obviously the big stage in March. When you're on that floor, you got all the bells and whistles of March and what March Madness is. They could be playing their first round game on a Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon. That's when I could see it becoming an issue.
Yes.
I could see them, you never know where you're playing. You could have a deep background in this arena. You could have a tighter rim. And St. John's could, like you said, they could go 5 of 17 from the free throw line. It'd be a real issue. So that is definitely something to look out for. But I just wanted to bring that up because, it's a perfect example. It literally happened last night where a mid-major, screwed themselves out of a possible, bid to the tournament because one of their best free throw shooters went to the line in the biggest moment and shit down his leg and ended up costing them. And I just instantly, when you said that, is what brought to my mind. I'm like, yeah, they missed like 3 or 4 free throws in the final minute and a half of the game. And now they're sitting on their couch at home hoping to possibly, get a bid to the CBI or the NIT. So yeah, that's my last point on that. But I agree with you. I think St. John's has all of it, everything they need by their side. Like this is their tournament to run. Can they run it? That's the real question. And, I think we both agree here that they will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think my final point that I'll make here about St. John's, I know we've said 3 final points now. This is the actual final point. I'm actively trying to pull up the this Big 12 bracket here, and it's giving me some fits, but we've got it now. So this is actually the final point here about St. John's is this is something that probably doesn't get talked about too much, but they are playing in an NBA arena, and there are several times when NBA arenas throw teams off. This will not throw St. John's off because they've been here a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know you mentioned earlier that they've played this arena a lot. Madison Square Garden will not intimidate them. It could intimidate a team like whoever, right? A team like UConn who maybe has played 2 games, maybe
Yeah.
in NBA Arena this year. So I think just keep an eye out for that. Also, come March Madness, that's something you'll see too.
That is definitely something we'll talk about on Sunday when we have our bracket review.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know how clear this is because this is a large bracket here. So we will zoom in a little bit here. And
They got too many teams in this bracket.
yeah, they do. They really do. So, all right. So we will go ahead and we'll start with this, the top kind of section here. For me, I think that whoever West Virginia plays, I think it could be a battle, but I think it's going to be close enough that when they get to play Houston on day for the second game in 2 days or third game in 3 days, this Colorado TCU game is going on as we're recording.
I will say right now, I will say this: Colorado is up 13 with 4 to go. So there's a very high chance that TCU spit the bit. West Virginia is going to get a bye game and then get to play Houston. So just keep that in mind. That in mind.
Okay. Or we get to see some real magic and get to see Colorado play their third game in 3 days against Houston and probably lose by 30.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, I think either way, whoever Houston plays, I think realistically can beat them pretty or Houston beats them pretty comfortably.
Yes.
I think that the Iowa State, so Cincinnati wins. I mean, go UC.
It looked half decent, but they were also playing Oklahoma State, officially losing record. So
yeah. So Cincinnati plays Iowa State tomorrow. Now, I think that realistically, I think Iowa State wins this game fairly comfortably. And then Iowa State BYU, I think this is a really interesting one. I think Iowa State beats BYU. I think this is a situation where Iowa State, this is a perfect, I think, example of where getting the 4 seed isn't always better than being the 5 seed, because Iowa State, I don't want to call UC a warm-up game, gets a warm-up game.
It is.
BYU is very, very, very reliant on shooting the 3 ball. We saw that against Utah when they didn't shoot the 3 ball well in the first half, they're losing.
Yeah.
And so if you don't shoot the 3 ball well, which this is a game in which, you haven't played in a certain amount of days, you're watching a bunch of games, I wouldn't be surprised you're playing on a really ugly court. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, horrible court. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State comes out really hot, goes up by 10, 15 early, and BYU struggles to get back into it. I think Iowa State's the better team, in my opinion. They've kind of been battling injuries all year, but I think they're healthy enough now. I see them playing Houston there in the semis.
Honestly, yeah, I agree with you. When I first looked at this bracket, my mind was definitely shifted the other way. I thought we were going to have a semifinals of BYU and Houston, but just considering how close this tournament really is played to Iowa State, how well Iowa State's fans travel to this tournament every year, I think you'll see it tomorrow morning if you check into the Iowa State-Cincinnati game. That place is going to be packed with Iowa State fans. It will be packed. It will be loud. And I think that's another big thing that's going to help, prop this Iowa State team up that's really kind of needs it. They've had a really wishy-washy past 2 months, like you said, dealt with injuries, different guys being out sick. But I think it really comes down to what you're going to get out of Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert. What are they going to bring? What are they going to bring like they brought in the beginning of the year? Are they going to go and revert back to being those players, those guys you could rely on to be studs, go out and get you 14 plus a game, like when we brought it up earlier in the year? Are they going to be those same guys, or are they going to go back to the guys where, they were fighting with other guys on the other team, they were yelling at the refs, getting teed up, or are they going to be those guys? And I think that's really going to be the difference of, is Iowa State going to be playing Houston in a rematch like they did last year in the tournament, or are they going to lose to BYU and then have to sit there and wait till Sunday to see what their seed is? Because you look at this Iowa State team, I mean, they were top 10 for a lot of the year. I mean, there's just no reason that they should have fallen out of even the top 3 in this league.
Right. I think injuries are a big deal for that too, though.
Yeah. And I think that's where, like you said, it kind of honestly helps them out that they get to play Cincinnati tomorrow because they get to have that extra game under their belt. I think that's going to help them. I really do. I think it's going to help them playing rather than waiting and sitting in that 4 or 3 spot. But yeah, no, I think they can beat UC pretty easily tomorrow. And then I think they'll have a battle with BYU, but I think they come out on top this time.
Yeah. So I think between Iowa State, Houston, like you said, rematch there. I think Houston is just they are my pick here to win the Big 12. I'll show my hand there a little bit. They're my pick to win it all this year. I'll show my hand a bit here. This Houston team, and I know we've texted about it a little bit, but when you have 3 guards, right, that are all in LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan, and Emmanuel Sharp,
Yep.
all 3 of those guys can shot create and they can clip from 3. I believe all 3 of them are 40+% on the year from 3. So
I believe you're correct with that.
when you tell me you have 3 guys that can shoot 40 plus from 3, all of them can shot create for themselves and create for others, and every single one of them plays defense at all conference defensive, like, or whatever you want to call all conference defensive team level. They are
Ken
all
Palm top 3 in defense. Like,
yes, and it is
it's crazy.
and that's harsh. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
it's I would. This is the thing that's a little bit frustrating me. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant here, and I really don't give a shit. So you look at like the net ratings and like offensive defensive efficiency, and Duke, it's like, oh my god, Duke is number 1 and number 2. Look at the ACC. Look at the teams that they play.
Exactly.
And I understand you can sit here and say, oh, look at what they did to Illinois when they played Illinois. They hung 100 on Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes,
team that was hurt and sick.
Yes. But I completely understand you've had a couple good games, but that's not what I'm saying. Auburn's had a couple, spectacular games, right? Alabama's had a couple spectacular games. Look what Bama did to Texas when they put up like 110 on them, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not saying you can't have good games against good teams, but what I am saying is when you get to play teams that are in the 150 to 200 in the net,
constantly,
probably
week in and week out
in conference play, that's going to stat pad your numbers a little bit. Yeah. So I think let's not overreact when we look at Duke's like offensive and defensive efficiencies, because I think they're certainly skewed. That's my point about that. But no, this Houston team, they play such good defense, 3 really good guards, and I didn't even mention the 35-year-old Jawan Roberts, who is spectacular at offensive rebounding. He is spectacular around the rim and an animal of a defender. I don't see a way in which Houston does not make the Elite 8, and then in the national tournament, I think they're a lock to get to the Elite 8. I don't care what 4 seed they have to play, 4 or 5 seed they have to play in the Sweet 16. And I think that in this tournament, they're locked to get to the final, and I really like them in the final against whoever they have to play.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we do text about this team a lot. It is by far my favorite team to watch. I love watching Houston. I think Kelvin Sampson's done a fantastic job. He took over this team, and we've talked about earlier in the year. This program was in shambles. This was a program that was in the basement of the American Athletic. They had a dog crap arena that was, half the size of what it is now. It was outdated. It looked like it was from the early 2000s, late 90s. They had maybe 10 to 20 to 200 fans show up in the stands every night. And, he got there and he completely changed it around. Completely changed it around. I sent you the stat earlier that I saw. They have 4 losses this year. Only one of those losses comes in regulation. Like, this isn't a team that is losing games in regulation and like they lose like automatically. Like, all right, yeah, let's chalk that one up. They just got beat tonight. Like, no, they fight so hard and they never give in. They never give in. I mean, 3 of their 4 losses are in overtime on the year. Well, it's crazy to me.
Something to bring up too is that look at how, like, we talk about who's peaking at the right time, right? And like a team like Maryland was peaking a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I still think they're going to be just fine, right? We talked about who was it earlier that we talked about? That's playing, Louisville's playing. They're hot at the right time, right?
Yep.
This Houston team is as hot as hot gets. Like their only loss since like I think early December. Is against Texas Tech in a game in which there's zero reason why that game should have gone to overtime, and they should have lost that game. They had that game in the bag and they played terrible. And it's like, okay, that game's a loss, whatever. But I look at why are they getting better? And it's because Emmanuel Sharp is starting to play like Emmanuel Sharp, and because you have a transfer in Milos Uzan who adjusted to the system. And you look at the way
he's finally getting it.
Yeah, you look at the way he's been playing in the last 2 months, and it's like, oh boy, this is scary. So that's my thing about Houston is it's not like a team like Louisville's kind of similar, right? You have a lot of guys coming in. We're adjusting to this new system under Pat Kelsey. The entire team is transfers. Oh, okay, now we're hitting the ground running. Bang, we're going, right? This Houston team is so scary to me because we have only seen a month and a half to 2 months of this team's potential. And when we have seen that, we've seen them just bury every team they've played. Texas Tech, they buried them. Texas Tech rose from the grave and somehow figured out a way to win. But it won't happen again. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back and I'm looking at Houston's schedule right now. I mean, three of their losses came in the first 7 games, and 2 of them were in that players tournament out in Vegas, which was a 5-point loss to Bama in OT, which they were winning for most of the game, and then a loss to San Diego State, also in the players by 3 in overtime. Like this team has gotten so much better throughout the year, and obviously they had that loss when they were playing down in Atlanta to Auburn by 5.
Mm-hmm.
Which was probably one of the best games, like at the beginning of the year, like probably of all year, like the whole year. That game was fantastic. And
Yeah.
you look at it, it's like this is a Houston team that in the past we used to worry about them not being able to score because obviously you look at it now, they only give up 58 points a game, but they weren't breaking the 70-point mark on offense.
No.
Like in the past couple of years, they weren't able to score. They weren't able to get
Yeah.
to 70. You look at them now, they're at 74. That is higher than they've been.
Well, and you look at
and
earlier.
it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and earlier in the year, that's what they were running into too, because Sharp was playing badly and Uzon hadn't really adjusted to the system yet, right? And now, I mean, like early, like let's go through the losses, right? You play San Diego State, you score 70. You lose to Auburn, I think they scored 69, and when you played Bama, you only scored 80, which for playing against Bama is low.
Especially when you're in OT too. It's like you needed OT
Yes.
and you needed OT and Bama and San Diego State just to get to 80 and 70.
Yes.
And you only put up 69 against Auburn, and Auburn's not necessarily known for having the most hounding defense.
Right. So I think for me, it's just the adjustment that we've seen, right? And it's this Houston team is scary. But okay, let's move on from Houston. So we both have Houston winning it all. Who are they? How is this going to play out down here? I think K-State is playing Arizona State tonight. I think K-State wins that, and I think K-State, Baylor, Kansas State, really quickly, is the most confusing team to me ever. They start the season and they're horrendous. They have a stretch in the middle of the season where they are probably a top 3 team in all of college.
They were the best team on KenPom, like statistically, for the whole month of January.
Yeah, like what? And then they kind of revert back to their ways and they're bad again. So if we get January Kansas State, they're going to be playing, on I think Sunday, right? Is that when? Or Sunday or Saturday, wherever, they're going to be playing in the championship. But I don't think we're getting January Kansas State. I wouldn't be surprised if they battle Baylor hard, though.
I could see them beating Baylor. I could see them beating
Baylor, and I wouldn't be surprised to beat Texas Tech, just because the way that Kansas State plays is just this free flowing. We don't care. We're gonna play such a casual style of basketball that in the Big 12 tournament, when you get to a conference tournament, that could help you actually, because teams play super tight, right? A team like Texas Tech, maybe they play super tight. We're trying to battle for, a 2 seed, maybe, or we're a 3 seed trying to battle for a 2 seed. We're not here very often. We're going to play really tight. This Kansas State team is not going to play really tight. Coleman Hawkins is going to come up. He's going to
got nothing to lose.
Threes. Doug McDaniel is going to do whatever the hell he wants. No look passes, whatever. And they're going to play very free. So I could see Kansas State even getting to the semifinals of this. I could see them losing tonight against Arizona State by 20. This is the highest seal. The difference between ceiling and floor. Kansas State is like, most teams are like probably like here. Maybe fluctuate from here to here. Kansas State is like, you can't even see either hand. They're both off the screen because
it's crazy. You truly have no clue who is going to show up on that basketball floor.
Yes.
I mean, and I saw it firsthand last Wednesday when I went to the game when they played Kansas State at Cincinnati, and both teams, you didn't know what you were going to get.
Yeah.
And Kansas State was horrendous on offense, but they played fantastic defense and kept the game low scoring. And the final was 54-49 or whatever it was. Like, it was a rock fight, and it was a Kansas State team that looked like they cared. And like, you just never know what you're going to get. And I agree with you. Like, their ceiling the floor is so, like, it's such a big gap that you really have no clue what's going to happen.
Yes. So let's quickly go to, let's say it's Texas Tech beats Kansas State in the quarters, and we'll say that Texas Tech is playing against the winner of Kansas Arizona. Who do you think wins that game? And then who do you think wins the game against Texas Tech as well.
So I really do see Kansas beating Arizona. I think Kansas in the past, week and a half has kind of started to round into shape a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
kind of starting to play a little bit more team basketball. You look at this Arizona team. This Arizona team hasn't won back-to-back games since they had a road trip at Arizona State and at BYU.
Mm.
They haven't won back-to-back games since. They beat Texas Tech, then they went at Kansas State, lost, played Houston, lost, beat Baylor, and vice versa, kept going back and forth. They haven't won back-to-back games in a row. But no, I think Kansas can get the job done. I'm not a humongous fan of this Arizona team. I think they rely a little bit too much on what Caleb Love's going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of usually know what he's going to do. He'll have one game where he goes off, but more likely than not, he's going to finish shooting 4 of 17, and you're going to look down at the box score, and he's going to be a free throw merchant. He's still going to finish with 15 points, but in the end, he's going to end up hurting the team. And I think that's what we've seen down the stretch this year is he just hasn't been consistent enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's from the field right now. He's shooting 37%. They put up 82 points per game, which is good for 23rd in the nation, but they give up 72. And I think that if this Kansas team really wants to cement themselves to hit the ground running into the tournament and even have people remotely think that they can, make it to the Sweet 16, because that's probably their ceiling right now,
Yeah.
they need to go out and they need to beat Arizona. Now, once they beat Arizona, I think Texas Tech handles them. I think Texas Tech is definitely clearly the second best team in this conference. I mean, they have the player of the year in JT Toppin. It's a team that shoots the lights out of the ball. Grant McCaslin has done a fantastic job of taking over for Texas Tech and building a fantastic program that, year in and year out has been able to showcase that they are good enough to be, top 4 in this league.
Yeah, no, as we're moving on here to the Big Ten, I hate that we do. No, don't get me wrong. I love doing these podcasts with you, Nick. I hate that we do these all the time because then we end up with the exact same thoughts on 95% of these.
I know.
Because I agree with you. I think Kansas is peaking, at the correct time here. And not peaking, but they're rounding up, and
I think they're playing a lot better than they have been.
Yes. So they also have a lot of experience. You think about a guy like Hunter Dickinson, a guy like AJ Storr. They have
Because
a guy
you
like
look
Riley Griffin. These guys have played deep into conference tournaments before. I mean, obviously, DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams have, but they've played deep into conference tournaments before, so this isn't going to phase them.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at it too, I already know people are going to go in and look at their their record in their last 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, and they're going to be like, well, what are these guys talking about? I mean, you look at it, they finished 3-4 on the year. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you legitimately watched the games down the last 2 weeks of the year. They went on the road and beat Colorado by 7. They were up by double digits the whole game. They were in control. They looked good. Then they came home and played Texas Tech. If Zeke Mayo doesn't take the worst 3-point shot known to man from the top of the arc, they win that game. They lose by 5 in regulation. They were in the game the whole time. They played great. Then you go and they play at Houston on a Monday, 2-day turnaround, and they battle them and they only lose by 6.
Mm-hmm.
In a game where they were also battling the whole time, right there with them. They were trading buckets with Houston, battling, and they only lost by 6. And then you go and you look what they do on senior night at home. They beat an Arizona team, like you said, scores the ball a lot, and they held them to 76, and they beat them by 7. This is a Houston team or Kansas team that, yes, their record in the last 2 weeks doesn't show that they've been playing great basketball. But if you go and look at their stats, it shows that they have been playing great basketball. They've been battling these upper Big 12 teams, and now we can see what they can do come tournament time. Because I think they easily win that their first game in the conference tournament. They're playing UCF or Utah. One of them doesn't have a head coach, and the other one may fire their head coach in the next coming weeks of how bad they were this year, and then they get a chance at like I said, get a chance at Arizona. Very close to home. So
yes. Yeah, no. I completely agree with you. Yeah, you watch the way that they're playing much better. So let's move into the Big Ten here. So You're probably going to know my pick here. It is my Spartans here. But let's look at a lot of this because this is uh, a lot of we talk about who's playing good basketball at the correct time. Michigan State is the only team that's in the top half of this bracket that is playing good basketball right now. Like
Yeah.
Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan, and Maryland have all looked very rough in the final 2 weeks of the season, right? So I think that the way that Michigan's playing, I would expect Purdue to beat Michigan. The way that Michigan is playing right now, I think they've shown a clear recipe to beat them, and that is to apply a ton of pressure and force their guards and Danny Wolf to make quick decisions, quick pressured decisions.
Yep.
And when you do that, they're going to turn the ball over. That's what's happened every time. So I think Michigan loses to Purdue, and I think Maryland is a team I see them in the conference championship because they're not playing the best basketball at the time, yes, but I do think that they have the ability to rebound really well and shoot the absolute crap out of the ball. And rebounding the ball really well, I think, is really, really, really important when it comes to conference tournament and March Madness, which Illinois does do really well. But I just think that when you can give yourself more opportunities, it hinders the risk of shooting poorly in a game. And I think that that's what Maryland does a really good job. They have a great inside presence. Wouldn't be surprised if I see them playing on Sunday in the Big Ten championship. I think as I just continue to fly through this here, I think that Wisconsin beats UCLA. We'll see Wisconsin playing against Michigan State in the semis, and I think the Michigan State handles them, but I wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin does get some revenge. I'm picking Michigan State because I'm a Michigan State fan. This Michigan State team is certainly beatable. They're by no means unbeatable, but they are playing spectacular basketball right now, and they just went through a gauntlet. So I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
if they do have a little bit of a rough start against Indiana, Oregon, similar to against Iowa, because they're like, oh, finally, we're not playing a top 15 team in the nation, but it's still a must-win game. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a rough start, maybe some shooting woes in the first half, but second half, I'm sure they'll be fine, and then they'll be flying, flying high for the rest of the tournament. In my not very professional opinion.
I mean, I will say this will be the bracket where I do differ with you a little bit, not a
Yeah.
lot, just a bit, and I think it's really going to be the bottom of the bracket for me.
Mm.
I'm not a big fan of Michigan. I think it's a great job what Dusty May's done. I like the way they play with the two big men, and Danny Wolf can make all these these crazy passes and act like he's an NBA point guard and this and that. I just don't like their guards. I don't really like their guard play. I don't think Trey Donaldson's that good. I think Namari Burnett is, every time you watch Michigan play, he'll sometimes drive to the bucket and have a cool looking dunk, or he'll make a three, but he doesn't do enough. He doesn't dribble the ball well enough. Like you said, they turn the ball over like it's just like it's their job. Like they turn the ball over way too much. They're way too careless with it. And if they don't get, just looking on to the March Madness tournament, if they don't get a good draw, they're going to get bounced first round.
Yep.
Like, they're going to get bounced first round. So like this is where I see Purdue. I think Rutgers will beat USC. I think Purdue then beats Rutgers, and I think Purdue beats Michigan. But this is where I see a rematch of the Friday night senior night game between Illinois and Purdue. I think Illinois is playing really good basketball. Both teams looked really, really good in that game. Obviously, Illinois, caught fire at the end towards that game and ended up winning and covering. But I think I just don't like the way Maryland's playing right now. I don't
Yeah.
think Maryland has enough. I don't think they have enough depth either.
Yeah, they definitely depth is the big problem that they have.
Like I don't think if you're a Maryland fan, you definitely don't love hearing when people are calling, your starting five the crab five. Like I get it, but guess what? You don't have depth. You have nobody else. That's all they have. They only have their five starters. They have nobody else coming off that bench that remotely brings any juice to the lineup. And that's a real problem. You got to have depth, especially down the stretch. So I think Illinois, they're playing really good basketball right now. They try to shoot the crap out of the three ball, and they don't do a very good job of it. So I think if Brad Underwood can kind of, pull the reins back on that, have them go back to the old style. I mean, they're lengthy enough. They play a very, very big lineup.
Yes.
To where I think they could be a legitimate team that you'll see in the semifinals of this tournament looking to go to the finals. And I think for the top half, I don't know. I really don't know. I want to take UCLA to beat Wisconsin just because I think Mick Cronin's team plays a tough enough style of defense to really mess with this Wisconsin lineup and really frustrate Tanje. I really think that they can do that. So I think I'm going to take UCLA to be the other team in the semi up there. Obviously, it's going to be Michigan State, but I want to harp on this 8-9 game. Obviously, you guys lost at home to Indiana.
Yep.
And you look at this Oregon team, you never know what you're going to get. This Oregon team at the beginning of the year was like 16-7. They had like 4 or 5 quad 1A wins. They went out and won the Players Tournament in Vegas. They're a scary team. They're a really, really scary team.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason they're sitting at number 8 because you don't know what you're going to get. You could get a team, like we said, that was a top 25 team at the beginning of the year, or you could get the team that, they've been down the stretch in conference play. That's been, all right, they're going to get a win here and there, but they're really not going to do much for you. I think Indiana beats Oregon, and then I think you guys get a little bit of revenge on Indiana. Tell them thanks for coming out to the tournament. Mike Woodson, goodbye. You're no longer going to play any more Big Ten tournament games here. And I think you guys will then go on and beat UCLA. And I think you guys actually will match up with Purdue in the final. But I will take Michigan State to win it. I will. I wanted to take Purdue, but just watching Michigan State down the stretch, I mean, they're literally, their conference games were a gauntlet down the past 3 weeks of conference play, and they battled adversity. They battled adversity. There was never a time where you really thought Michigan was down and out and they were never going to be able to, or Michigan State was down and out. They're never going to be able to come back. I mean, you dominated your rival twice.
Yeah.
You look what you do and you go and do on the road at Iowa. You get down early. You're kind of getting your ass whipped in the first half. You bounce back and then you end up winning the game by double digits and win it easily.
Yeah.
You win it easily. And, I think it's a team that, especially with Izzo, being the top guy, this is a team. He's been there before. He knows what he's doing. And shout out to Pardon My Take. If you don't watch them or if you haven't watched them, he had a fantastic interview that came out on Monday. And, I think Michigan State's really destined to, if they win this, they could get up to a 2 seed. And you never know, if you get some weird movement on the 1 line, they could sneak into a 1 seed if they win out.
Yeah, I think you're a 2 seed. If they're, as of right now, they're a 2 seed. I think as long as you beat Indiana or Oregon, you're going to remain a 2 seed.
Yeah.
You lose in the semis, I think you're going to remain a 2 seed. Maybe you're the worst 2 seed, but I think you're still fine. The thing that I like what you're saying. I do think Purdue beats Michigan. I completely see a way in which Illinois, I harped on the importance of rebounding. Illinois is the best rebounding team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So I think them against Maryland is going to be like probably the 2 best. Maybe Michigan State's better than Maryland. I don't know, but it's 2 of the 3 best rebounding teams in the Big Ten. They are very, very good rebounding team. Both teams are. So whoever wins that, I do think beats, or whoever wins that, I think is going to battle Purdue or Michigan really well. I do think the thing about Purdue, you said Purdue's in the final, like playing Michigan State, and you think Michigan State gets them. If that's the case scenario, I completely agree because Purdue's playing 4 games in 4 days there.
Yep.
I understand Michigan State's playing 3 and 3. Purdue's Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn and Fletcher Lawyer play probably 35 to 37 minutes in big
I would say they are constantly on the floor.
So if this USC Rutgers game, if Purdue doesn't win this game by 15 or 20 and get to rest some guys, they have to play 30 plus minutes in that game, I promise you they're going to play 34 plus against Michigan and against Illinois or Maryland. So in 4 days, that's so much basketball to play. Whereas Michigan State, they're 10 guys deep and they play everybody 25 minutes, 15 to 25 minutes. So I think it's a lot less of an impact there for Michigan State as compared to Purdue, but completely agree with you on everything there. We will finally, we'll move past this one and we will shift to the maybe one of the most hyped up conference tournaments ever. Is that crazy to say?
I would have to say yes, because what I've seen on Twitter the past couple of days is the fact that people are going to try to say this is going to be better than the March Madness tournament. Can you believe people are even going to remotely say that? I mean, I get the SEC bias. I get it. Trust me. The SEC runs all of college. It's the SEC football, SEC, SEC baseball, SEC basketball. I get it. and the SEC this, SEC that. This will not be better than the March Madness tournament. This will not
No.
be better than it. And the fact that people are even saying that is crazy. But I
Yeah.
saw it multiple times, and I think I laughed even more each time I saw it because that's ridiculous to think about. Completely ridiculous to think about.
Yeah, no, it is ridiculous to think about. Don't get me wrong. I'm this
Like,
with
the
the
people want to
brackets
watch
giving me.
LSU versus Mississippi State or South Carolina versus Arkansas. Come on, like let's be real.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I'm pulling this up here. It's giving me a little bit of fits here.
I will say this will be the most eventful conference tournament. I will say that it is probably one of the most eventful ones there's been.
Yes,
But I will
definitely.
not go nearly as far as some people are saying, with it being better than actual March Madness tournament.
Yes. All right. So it's going to be a little bit blurry here just because it's giving me some fits, but don't mind the blurriness. I'm sure you can recognize logos and
Yeah,
we're just
it's
fine here. So let's start with maybe the elephant in the room, Auburn Tigers, number 1 seed for a long time. And then they lost, 2 of the last 3. I mean, they've lost back-to-back games, A&M and Alabama. So I think
didn't
Auburn has
look
a lot.
great. Didn't look great in them either. Well,
No, Auburn.
they looked good against Bama, but they didn't look great against A&M.
Yeah, they have a lot to prove, in my opinion. But I think realistically, this is where you see Auburn handle whoever they have to play. I think they handle Ole Miss or Arkansas. I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
And then I also think that the game against A&M, I think A&M beats Vandy. I think that's going to be a good game. I wouldn't be surprised if Vandy really, really competes in that, but I think A&M's defense is just too good. And then we see the most defensive battle of the entire tournament of A&M versus Tennessee, the two defensive hounding teams in the SEC here. And we see them play. Whoever wins that game, I could see beating Auburn. I think this Auburn team, the recipe to beat them, I guess, I don't know. I mean, the recipe to beat them is on the defensive side of the basketball, I believe. Even in the Alabama game, Alabama, as crazy as it sounds, they scored 95 in that game, but in OT,
yeah.
the defensive side of the ball is where you beat out where you beat Auburn. That's where A&M certainly did, and I think Tennessee and A&M both absolutely can do that there. But I'm gonna let you break down this bracket really quickly. I'm gonna take the first restroom break of this hour and a half recording here.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I look at it, I think if Arkansas wins their first round game against South Carolina, I think they're in. I think Arkansas literally just needs one win. Doesn't even have to be a good win, but if they beat Carolina, they're in. And then you look at they have to play Ole Miss. This is an Ole Miss team that's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I still think they're good enough to beat Arkansas. So I think you'll see Ole Miss playing Auburn. Auburn will beat the crap out of them in that Friday noon matchup game. And then you look down, I think it says that Vanderbilt's already going to beat Texas, and I kind of agree with that. I think Vanderbilt beats Texas. I don't think they have a problem with that. I think A&M doesn't have a problem with Vanderbilt, and I think you're looking at an A&M versus Tennessee, and I'm going to give Tennessee the benefit of the doubt because you're literally playing in their backyard, not very far away. That place will be filled with volunteer fans, and I think that's when we see a semifinal on Saturday in that 1 o'clock slate with Auburn versus Tennessee.
Mhm.
Now, when we get to that game, yeah, Tennessee plays a really, really good brand of defense. It's going to be a Tennessee-filled crowd. Like I said, they're playing in Nashville. The Vols are going to have a lot of support there to help them. But I think that's the game where we really do see what Auburn is. And I think we're going to see the version of Auburn that we've seen all year, minus the last week. An Auburn team that is, going to play together, a team that's ready, and is going to show that they deserve to be one of, if not the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. But then you go to the bottom, these first round games don't really mean anything. I think Oklahoma needs to win. Oklahoma needs to win if they want to have a tournament resume to get themselves on the right side of the bubble. I don't think they will win that game, but if they can somehow pull out a win, I think you're looking at a team that might be able to sneak into the last 4 in if they win that, and then they get a rematch with Kentucky, who they already have bad blood with. You look at what, obviously that game when you had OA coming home,
I mean, there was a lot of bad blood mixed in there. They couldn't even shake hands at the end. They almost got into a fight. You know, the only reason Kentucky wins is because Oweh scores 20 or 18 of the last 21 points for Kentucky. But I'll give Kentucky the benefit of the doubt there. And then, you know, you get a rematch of Kentucky and Bama. I think Bama's going to be too much for Kentucky. I think Bama really showed on Saturday that they are a legit team. People need to quit sleeping on them, and you know, that they can make a legitimate case for that last one seed, and you know, make a serious run come March. And then you look at, you know, you got LSU and Mississippi State. I think that's going to be an absolute snooze fest of a game. I mean, LSU is terrible. And then Mississippi State has been playing awful as of late. This is a team that was ranked top 15 in the country at a point. You know, a team that plays the shit out of your defense.
Yeah, I think Mississippi State's a team that, like, they're a sleeper team that if you catch Josh Hubbard on the wrong night, can go off. I mean, this guy can shot create with the best of them, and when he's hitting, he's hitting. The problem is he's not hitting very often. I think he's shooting 37% from the field in the season, so he doesn't hit very often. But he's certainly a shot chucker. But with a shot chucker, you run into maybe a good night for him. I think realistically, kind of just to hop in here, but I see that Auburn plays Tennessee or A&M. In my hot take of the entire day, we haven't had very many hot takes, is Auburn loses this game to Tennessee or to A&M. I don't really know. I have no clue who this is going to be. And then I think between Florida and Bama, I am so 50-50 torn on this game. I think this is going to be a heck of a game. This maybe is the best game of the entire week, is this Florida Bama game.
Yeah.
And then I think that what we see is whoever wins this game wins the SEC tournament on the following day, on, I believe, Sunday. So I think overall this tournament, the Bama Florida game is going to be a huge game. The A&M versus Tennessee game is a massive game. That's going to be a must watch for me, is Tennessee A&M. And then obviously Auburn versus whoever that is going to be a huge game. And of course, the final is a big game too. But I think that Florida Bama is going to be, for me, my biggest game. Whoever wins this game between the two of them, in my opinion, probably gets a 1 seed. So I think that's one thing to really watch out for. Whoever wins that gets 1 seed. Whoever doesn't is a 2 seed. So a lot of things here. I'm going to lean here just because I have to make a pick. I'm going to lean Alabama here. I think Alabama's peaking at the right time, coming off the win against Auburn. You get to warm up, get the legs under you against whoever you play, whether it's Kentucky, Georgia, whoever it is. And then I think against the Gators, this Bama team is so dangerous, because if you catch them on the wrong night, they're unbeatable. You catch them on the night when they played Texas back in mid-February, they're unbeatable. You will not even compete with them, because if they're shooting 40% from three, good night. So I think Bama is so dangerous in that sense, and they're starting to kind of figure some things out too. I'm going to take them to win this SEC tournament, get that final 1 seed. But I do think it's going to be a heck of a game between them and Florida.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably the game of the tournament, besides obviously the championship game.
Yeah.
I'm really having a hard time, you know, pulling my ring out of the hat for Auburn, because I've been so big on Auburn all year.
Yeah.
Just the way they've been playing. Obviously, it's a tough, week stretch. I think Bruce Pearl is going to have them ready to prove that they are legitimately one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Now, do I like that it's going to take them having to show it in the SEC tournament instead of just finishing out the job like they needed to do in the regular season? Yeah, that bugs me a little bit, because it showed that, Auburn already knew they had the SEC regular season locked up. They knew what they had. They knew they already had it. Like they were celebrating in the bus when they saw that Bama lost on the buzzer beater when Tennessee beat them. And I didn't like that. I mean, obviously I like that you're celebrating. You can celebrate. But I don't love how after that moment, when you were standing on Kentucky's court, had your belt in your hands and was literally giving belt to ass while fans were booing you and screaming, that you then go onto the bus, you celebrate like crazy, and then you come out the next 2 weeks and you play, 2 top 15 teams in the country, and you lay duds. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But I think Bruce Pearl is going to have them locked in for this, these next couple of days of practice. and then I think they'll be ready to show. But I'm still not going to pick them to win it. I don't think they win it. I think they get there to the final, which obviously secures them as a 1 seed, which I already think they are. And then I'm actually going to take Florida. I'm going to take Florida. I think Florida can get into an absolute dogfight with Bama. I think they can out-tough Bama. And I think that they can go on to play Auburn, and I think they can beat Auburn in that final. And now, don't get me wrong. I think Alabama is a fantastic team. They will be going deep in my legitimate tournament, but I think that Florida is just playing really good basketball right now. You know, they're a team that under Golden has been fantastic. You know, after all the allegations early in the year, all of the crap that we had to talk about, and, you know, meshing the transfers with the guys that you've brought back. I think they just got some really good guards. You know, Walter Clayton, very high chance that he could be a first-team All-American this year.
Yep.
You bring in Elijah Martin, who made it to the finals, played on a Final Four team. You got these guys that they've been there. You know, they know what they're doing with it. Not that Alabama has been there, because obviously they went to the Final Four last year. But I think Florida can beat them, and then I think Florida can go on and beat Auburn in that championship and hoist that trophy on Sunday.
Yeah, I think between the Florida and Bama game, Florida's going to win the game on the glass. Alabama's going to win the game at the 3-point line, and in transition. And whichever team offsets the other team's strength better, and then obviously performs at their strength the best. If Florida comes out here and out rebounds them 40-28, Florida's going to win this game.
Yeah.
If Bama comes out here and they have 25 points in transition and hit 14, 15 threes, Bama's going to win this game.
Yep.
So I think that it's how can you offset the other team's strength and how can you perform at yours? I think those are the two big categories there for me. One quick thing I really want to touch on is the importance of games for teams in days 1 and 2 here. Obviously, I think you mentioned Arkansas. I think I heard that when I was taking the old bio break there. Arkansas and Vanderbilt both. I think Vanderbilt's maybe.
I'd say Vanderbilt's pretty solidly in.
Yeah.
I was saying, I think Arkansas they have to win.
Yes.
Now, and I think that's it. In the next round they could lose to Ole Miss. I don't think it matters. I think they have to win this so they can avoid that bad loss. And that if they lose to Ole Miss, the committee sees it's not a bad loss. You're like, okay, whatever, that's fine. And I think the other game that is humongous for this is the last game of the first day. Tomorrow is Oklahoma and Georgia. Oklahoma is on the wrong side of the bubble right now. Georgia's solidly in. They completely flipped their year around. Flipped their year around. They've done a great job with that program. But Oklahoma, if they get this win, like I was saying, if they win this, there you go. That's a quad 1 win. That's a win against a team that's on the right side of the bubble in the tournament. And then you get a rematch with your old friend Kentucky, who you had the bad blood with. And if you win that, I think then you are going to be solely in the tournament. So, there's a few first-round teams here that they're not fighting for their life, but could definitely play themselves out of the tournament if they don't get out of that first round.
Yep, and I think while we're talking about this, I want to move over to move back to the Big Ten really quickly too. Indiana, Oregon. Indiana's in the same spot. If you win and then lose to Michigan State, I think you're in. Ohio State's in a spot where if you beat USC and then lose to Illinois, I think you're in. For both of those teams, depends how many bid stealers there are, right? If there's like last year, I think there was record high 5 bid steals. If there's 5 bid steals again, it's going to be really. If somebody other than VCU goes and wins the A10, boy, right?
Like we talked about with Xavier earlier, if they don't get that win against Marquette, you're not surely in anymore. You're going to be on the right side of the bubble even if you lose to Marquette. But if we get some bid stealers, that's going to be a team that you'll see that will be on that wrong side of that bubble come March. And that's like the worst feeling in the world.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So just a couple teams there to watch for as you were watching in days 1 and 2, right? Before you're into the quarterfinals, the semis, the finals, where obviously those games are really entertaining, high-powered teams playing. Some of these low-powered teams that are not low-powered, lesser-powered teams, lesser ranked teams, these games mean even more for those because realistically, the difference between Maryland being a 4 and a 5 seed, how big of a difference is that, right? But the difference between maybe not Maryland. The difference between Illinois being in a 6 or a 9 seed, what's the big difference in that? The difference between Ohio State being in the tournament or not in the tournament is huge, right? So I think that's just something to monitor, something to watch, because that's always fun when you get a team playing for their life, right? For their season. That's always fun. But this has been a long episode, to say the least, Nick.
Been a great episode.
But we moved through it. We actually moved through it quicker than I thought we would. So nice.
I mean,
nice work on keeping
still
it.
about a little over an hour, but I mean, it was a fantastic episode.
Yeah, no, it was.
Definitely. I think it definitely helped that we didn't have to talk much about the ACC because it's literally 2 or 3 teams. Same with the Big East. I mean, we kind of were the same way. It was kind of St. John's, or maybe Xavier can get a win against Marquette and then play themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, those two definitely help because there's not really much to talk about. But I know tonight, obviously, we're filming this on tonight is Tuesday.
Yeah.
We got some more tickets being punched tonight. I think we're up to 7 right now for tickets punched. I think we're getting another 4 or 5 tonight. So, I mean, we're legitimately getting there. We're right on the doorstep, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
No, I could not either. So that has been 5 conference tournaments completely broken down here, the Power 5 there. And then obviously, like you said, there's plenty of other bids being punched. And Sunday we'll have content pretty much every day. Next week, I mean, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we'll have content on players to watch. Our official bracket will come out probably on Tuesday.
That's probably like my favorite. That might be my favorite episode we do.
It's hard not to love that. I mean, it's like
that's a fantastic episode. I loved it.
It's like the buildup of the entire year. Like everything that we do comes down to that, right? And you better have your Michigan State National Championship T-shirt ready, because I don't know how. I always let you pick Michigan State in that sense, because I can't be biased.
I know you never let me do it. You never let yourself do it.
Yeah, but
I'll treat them right this year.
Hey, I appreciate that. But other than that, though, this has been the Sports Geeks podcast. They play, we talk. If you're still watching, thank you for watching. Peace, guys.